China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission. He will talk about how the banking and insurance sectors are promoting high-quality development and answer your questions. We are also having with us today Mr. Zhao Huan, Chairman of China Development Bank, Mr. Guo Shuqing, Chairman of Agricultural Bank of China, Mr. Luo Xi, Chairman of PICC, and Mr. Song Shuguang, Chairman of Sinosure. Now some opening remarks from Chairman Guo. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades, friends, good morning. On behalf of China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission, or CBIRC, and on behalf of the chairs on the stage, I would like to extend heartfelt thanks to all the journalists who have been supporting the reform and development of the banking and insurance sectors. I wish you happy Spring Festival and all the best. In 2020, facing the serious and complex domestic and international situations, the CBIRC and the banking and insurance systems have followed the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core. We have strengthened political development, enhanced the full consciousness, the full confidence, and to uphold. We have firmly upheld the decisions of the CPC Central Committee and the State Council. Under the leadership of the Financial Stability Development Committee of the State Council, we have met the challenges head on. We have pursued progress while maintaining stability and secured a victory against financial risks with supply-side structural reform as a focus. We have enhanced the modernization of financial governance system and capability. Now let me share with you 6 points. Number one, we have supported the economy in returning to normal growth. Since the start of COVID-19, we have put people and life first. We have adopted measures, including providing 5.3 trillion of special credit and made over 500 million insurance payments. By the end of 2020, the RMB loans increased by 19.6 trillion yuan over the beginning of last year, and the principal and interest payment deferral was made to 6.6 trillion yuan of loans. We also provided 24 billion yuan of emergency loans in 5 pilot provinces and made 1.5 trillion yuan of interest concessions. We provided strong support to business reopening, the 6 stabilities and 6 protections. The manufacturing loans were added by 2.2 trillion yuan, which was bigger than the combined volume for the previous 5 years. We also added 5.7 trillion yuan of loans to the private sector and made 292 billion yuan of health insurance payments. We also supported poverty reduction. In the past 3 years, we provided 9.2 trillion yuan of targeted poverty reduction loans, and agriculture-related insurance stood at 3.5 trillion yuan. We also supported the battle against pollution. By the end of 2020, the green finance of 21 main banks stood at 11.5 trillion yuan. Number two, we promoted digital transformation and enhanced financial inclusion. We have accelerated innovations. According to relevant reports of international organizations, our financial inclusion services now is meeting international standard. Our e-payment, digital credit, and online insurance are among the strongest in the world. In 2020, our IT input of banking and insurance sectors stood at 207 billion yuan and 35 billion yuan, respectively, up 20 and 27% respectively. The 5 large commercial banks established their special fintech companies. For example, the Construction Bank of China have made lending easier for small and micro businesses. which has facilitated the development of small and micro businesses. By the end of 2020, the loans for small and micro businesses stood at 15 trillion yuan. And for the 5 large commercial banks, the growth was 54.8%. Number 3, we made decisive successes in preventing financial risks. At the 2016 Central Economic Work Conference and the 2017 Financial Work Conference, General Secretary Xi Jinping stressed the importance of preventing financial risks. The banking and insurance sectors have followed the guidance of General Secretary Xi and adopted a lot of targeted measures to fend off financial risks. A lot of hidden problems have been resolved, and we fended off systemic risks. The financial leverage rate has decreased, and the blind expansion of financial assets have been curbed. In the past, there was a sort of tendency of channeling funding to the real sector, to the real economy, and now we have curbed this momentum, and the situation has changed for the better. Meanwhile, the identification and settlement of NPL have made solid progress. Between 2017 and 2020, 8.8 trillion NPL was settled, and the shadow banking was effectively controlled, 20 trillion yuan less than the peak era. We have also curbed financial misconduct and addressed the internet financial risks. We've also effectively responded to external risks and maintained resilience of the financial sector. In addition, the financialization and bubbles of the housing sector have been curbed. Meanwhile, the hidden debt problems for the local governments have been addressed. The debt problems for the large and medium companies have been addressed. Number 4, we have strengthened regulation. We have firmly enhanced integrity and fought corruption in our system, enhanced discipline, and a group of corrupt officials have been brought to justice. We have strengthened accountability mechanisms. In 2020, we imposed discipline punishment on 164 individuals. We have also strengthened regulatory weak links. We adopted 61 regulations in 2020, and we also imposed 3,178 punishments on law-breaking institutions, and over 4,000 punishments on relevant individuals. We worked together with line ministries to advance the diverse settlement of financial disputes. In this process, we made 17 billion yuan of compensations for the consumers. Number 5, the corporate governance system was improved. President Xi Jinping chaired the G20 Hangzhou Summit, in which relevant corporate governance principles were adopted. We followed such principles and enhanced the corporate governance in the banking and insurance sectors. We have strengthened party leadership, party supervision within the companies, and ensured that the party organizations can truly play its role as the leading core and political core in the companies. The look-through examination mechanism has been strengthened. The related party transaction has been carried out in an orderly manner. In this way, we have further improved the commercial banking system. The 4 large commercial banks are having the same or similar management efficiency as their international peers. Large commercial insurance companies also having sound capital adequacy rate, which is quite similar to their peers in the US, Europe, and Japan. Number 6, we have also deepened reform in the banking and insurance sectors. We have addressed risks for small and medium banks and advanced the insurance capital application, commercial auto insurance, and accident insurance reforms. We have also channeled long-term funds to support the development of the capital market. Since 2018, we approved the establishment of over 100 international banks and insurance companies, and a number of international companies have come to do business in China, and they are becoming more and more passionate about investing in China. This year marks the first year of the 14th five-year period. CBRC will continue to follow Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, implement the decisions of the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee, a Central Economic Work Conference. We will pursue high-quality development in our sector in the following areas. Number one, we will strengthen mechanisms to support the real economy and with targeted support for science and technology, advanced manufacturing, private sector, small and micro businesses, rural revitalization, and green development. Number two, we will deepen financial supply-side structural reform. We will take a consumer and market-oriented approach, foster more specialized financial institutions, and develop more market banking products to meet people's needs, and develop the third pillar, pension and other insurance systems. Number three, we will continue to prevent risks and closely monitor and address various financial risks. Number four, we will uphold fair competition, fight against monopoly and blind expansion of the financial sector. And number five, we will deepen financial reform. And six, we will continue to increase party building and strengthen internal management, build loyal, clean, and responsible regulators. We will adopt real efforts to ensure a good start of the 14th five-year period and celebrate the 100th anniversary of the party with major progress in our system. These are my opening remarks. Now my colleagues and I are happy to answer your questions. Thank you. Now the floor is open. Please identify your affiliations before posing the questions. Thank you. With CGTN, my question is for Chairman Guo. Last year was the closing year for preventing financial risks. What key progress has been made in the 3 years? And what will be the priorities for the next stage? You also pointed out that the housing sector has become the gray rhino area for preventive risks. How do you see the risks in this sector? What measures will be taken to control the risks in this sector? Meanwhile, digital transformation has been carried out in the banks. What challenges have this brought for banking regulation? And what risks need to be prevented in this process? Thank you for your questions, which are all very good. But the problem is that you have raised 7 or 8 questions together. In the interest of time, I will just give some brief answers in order to save some time for the colleagues here. While preventing and addressing financial risks is very important for the banking and insurance sectors, we need to follow the requirement of the CPC Central Committee. We need to reduce the high leverage rate in the system. We had some rapid growth in the past, and in the past 4 years, the banking and insurance sector are growing at a relatively low level, and the growth rate was 8.3% for the banking sector and about 11% for the insurance sector, which was just half than the previous several years. In this process, the idle fund in our system has been greatly reduced, which is very important. And through such efforts, our financial system has been better able to run smoothly with risks under control. We've also settled NPLs. The NPLs we settled in 4 years was equal to what we did in the previous 12 years. Number 3, we have effectively dealt with the shadow banking system. In the past, the volume of the shadow banking in China was really big. Probably they had different names, for example, investment or P2P or wealth management, but actually they are by nature credit. The shadow banking sector is actually doing some banking services, but they are not running according to banking rules. For example, for banks, they need to have sufficient capital adequacy ratio, but these shadow banking services and businesses were evading the regulation, were not meeting relevant capital adequacy standards. And we have adopted strong measures to reduce the shadow banking sector by over 20 trillion yuan. We have also addressed illegal fund raising, and we have achieved fundamental improvement in this area. We also talk about the housing sector. Actually, financialization and bubbles of this sector is still serious. Last year, loans to the housing sector dropped to a level which is below the average growth of the lending, the first time in many years. We believe that the housing sector will become better and better. We are adopting differentiated measures in different cities in the housing sector. Our purpose is to ensure stable land price, housing price, and stable expectations. Through gradual measures, we hope to properly address the problems of the housing sector. The key problem of this sector is the bubbles of this sector, which, as I said, the biggest gray rhino. A lot of people want to speculate or make investment through buying homes, which is very dangerous. As a person holds so many houses, what would happen if the prices fall in the future? Then that would damage the personal investment and capital, and the banks cannot take back the loans. That would also have big impact on the overall economy. We need to take proactive and prudent measures to address the problems. These are my answers. Thank you. Next question, please. Thank you. My question is also for Mr. Guo. I'm from Market News International. Compared with major economies in the West, China has been taking the lead in normalizing its policies. The differences of the paces of Chinese and foreign policies are unfolding. What kind of impact will this have on Chinese policies and Chinese market? And some people are now concerned about capital inflow and capital bubbles or imported inflation. Do you think what's your response to their concerns? These are very good questions.
Indeed, since the onset of COVID-19, the global economy has been put in a very significant fluctuation, predominantly downward. China also suffered setbacks in Q1 last year and then Q2. And when it turned to Q3 and Q4, China returned to normal. And if it took an annual perspective, China still faces great pressure of going downward. Different countries face different problems, and some countries in particular, for those suffered a huge hit from COVID-19, were significantly affected by COVID-19. But all countries, generally speaking, adopt a relatively easing policy financially. But we must bear in mind the repercussions and aftermath of the policies. Some of the effects are emerging. For example, the financial markets of the developed economies are on a high level, which are not inconsistent with the level of and development of the real economy. Normally speaking, the two aspects should be compatible, but now, as they are not inconsistent with each other, someday in the future, the financial market shall be readjusted. Now, because of the increase of liquidity in the global market, as we live in an interconnected global village, the capital inflow to China has been increasing significantly. As you said, China is taking the lead in normalizing its policy, and our asset price is very attractive to the global investors. So it is necessary for capital to flow into Chinese market. But for now, the scale and speed of capital inflow is still under control. And we're also discussing more effective ways to attract more international capital into the Chinese market. But at the same time, we'll take measures to prevent great fluctuations of the domestic financial market. We have confidence in finishing this task. Thank you very much. Next question, please. With CRI. In 2020, the COVID-19 has imposed huge pressure on the global economy and global trade. Foreign export-related companies face great difficulties. What are the measures for the banking and insurance to support these companies? Thank you.
Our export situation was better than expected last year. There was a slowdown on the international market, and different countries were having greater demand for Chinese products. So China's export was quite good last year. And rarely had we seen such a big surplus in trade, and that was created by the special conditions. In this aspect, Mr. Guo Shuqing, who is the chairman of Sinosure, he knows the situation probably better. And Mr. Song, please answer this question.
Since the onset of COVID-19, General Secretary Xi Jinping made 3 remarks highlighting the role of export insurance. So over the past year, we've been implementing the decisions and plans of the CPC Central Committee and the State Council under the guidance of the CPIRC. We made policies and contributed our part to ensuring stability and protecting the 6 priority areas to fight the COVID-19. In 2020, we rolled out 10 special measures at the onset of COVID-19 to meet the urgent import need of medical supplies. And then we formulated 23 phased and extraordinary measures covering project insurance, financing, management and claims, and credit services and risk management. The work has delivered positive results. And the main work results could be summarized as follows. First, in light of the increase of external risks, last year the underwriting exceeded 700 billion US dollars for the first time and up by 16% year on year, including over 580 billion US dollars supporting exports, accounting for 22% of the total volume of exports. Last year, we also support 147,000 companies, including more than 40,000 new customers, ensuring over 15 million export-related jobs. And also, we made great contribution to advance the Belt and Road Initiative by providing insurance support. And we supported export investment to countries along the Belt and Road of more than 150 billion US dollars. And also we supported exports to the US of more than 50 billion US dollars, up by 13%. And we provided special support for electronic innovation, home appliances, and other industries, giving priority to protect the leading enterprises in the global supply chain. And annual support for trade in the electronic information industry was more than 100 billion US dollars, an increase of 23%. And we also assumed the pre-export insurance. We also helped address the difficulties in financing. We combine our work together with the banking financing services. We work together with 167 banks, domestic and foreign, to provide insurance financing for foreign trade-related companies. Together, we provide no mortgage and special insurance products for micro and small-sized enterprises. And through drip irrigation policy, we provided targeted financing plans for small and medium-sized foreign trade-related companies by working together with the PBOC. And we provided 53 national platforms together with other credit service providers to support micro and small-sized companies. And over 4,800 companies benefited from these national platforms. And we also explore new ways to help them. In the past 2 years, we put focus on the digitization of our model, and we upgraded our database, global database. So now we can provide real-time service for companies to look up information in our databases. And some specific programs and projects have been rolled out for small and medium-sized companies. They will now receive real-time information of global risks in all areas. So they do not no longer worry about potential risks when they want to receive orders from foreign countries. Also, we set up an academy for training small and medium-sized companies. We selected 1,000 companies as the pilot programs to provide training. So last year, we helped supported the development of over 100,000 companies of small and micro-sized. And with the help of us, their trade volume increased by 41%. And their pressure of operating costs were eased by 35%. We also help companies to prevent and guard against financial risks. We continue to push the information of export control of all countries around the world to companies, covering key industries, key countries, and key markets. We also pushed analysis report of global risks and national risks of countries around the world, so companies could see this as a reference and make their decisions. We also help companies to get back to recover their losses. We have over 300 channels of helping companies recover their losses, to prevent companies from default risks. And also, as for compensation, we set up fast tracks for compensation to ensure speedy compensation and in-time compensation. And the time were shortened significantly by 41%. And the increase of compensation was at 32%. As Sinosure, as an insurance institute, played a unique role of stabilizing foreign trade and contributing to the growth of China's development in the past year. And I may add that I think he gave a very good answer of the performance of Sinosure in the last year. Indeed, the support to companies in foreign trade in the face of COVID-19 was very significant. But as you said, you supported about 22% of export. But people may think that this performance was achieved with the government support. Is it in compliance with the WTO rules or equal trade? And I know some foreign correspondents may have this concern. So I may ask this question on their behalf. Can you answer this question? I may say that export insurance is a tool recognized by the WTO. Since our inception, we have been following the rules of WTO and doing our work. So we always follow 3 standards. First, support national strategy. Second, support the development of companies, and third, ensure the financial sustainable development. So, is there any subsidies? No, we do not have any subsidies. So, the companies pay their premium on a voluntary basis? Yes, indeed, the companies. We operating following the market principles and rules. You must be honest, Mr. Song. Well, next question, please. Nikkei. In August last year, when Chairman Guo received an interview from the media, you said that in 2021 we'll make even more vigorous efforts to deal with the NPLs. How do you see the NPLs in 2021, and how much of NPLs is expected to be disposed of?
Thank you for your question. I said that this year, the NPLs to be settled by us would increase over the previous year. Last year, the situation was special, and we disposed a lot of NPLs. But still, the rate did not exceed 13%. That is why we said that we did not adopt extraordinary easy monetary policy. Since the start of COVID, some businesses are not running at a normal state, and they had difficulties in paying back the loans. For some companies, they were facing the risks of bankruptcy and restructuring. These companies were unable to pay back the loans. So the increase of NPLs was a trend, a natural trend. Actually, last year, we strengthened efforts to deal with NPLs. And we dealt with 3.02 trillion yuan of NPLs last year, an increase of 700 or 800 billion yuan over the previous year. We do not have a specific indicator in this regard. We're talking with different banks and see their assessment of their NPLs. Probably in 2021, they need to deal with more NPLs. And probably the trend would extend to 2022, as some loans would have longer period of maturity. We have the confidence and ability to properly control NPLs. If necessary, we need to step up efforts. Meanwhile, we need to move prudently and cautiously, bear in mind the resilience of the financial sector. I think the chairs on the stage would have authoritative answers from their own perspectives. Probably Mr. Gu from Agricultural Bank of China can give some brief answers. He used to serve as the president of ICBC, and here, as the chair of ABC, or Agricultural Bank of China, I would focus on ABC. Now, he cannot speak on behalf of ICBC. He can only speak on behalf of ABC. Well, let me share with you some figures to support the arguments presented by Chairman Guo. Credit risks have long been the focus for commercial banks in preventing financial risks. For the ABC, our credit asset is about 15 trillion yuan. In recent years, with the direction of CBIRC, the ABC has been working hard to deal with NPLs. Since 2017, we've dealt with a total of over 520 billion yuan of NPLs. Last year, we overcame the difficulties presented by COVID. We dealt with a large number of NPLs and ensured the stability of our credit assets. Just now, Chairman Guo said that in the whole banking sector, over 3 trillion yuan of NPLs were dealt with, an increase of 700 or 800 billion yuan over the previous year. For our bank, our situation is quite similar to our counterparts. Yeah, well, for our bank, I cannot make clear the specific figures here, but I can say this. Our situation is quite similar to other banks in China. This is the first point. We're stepping up efforts to deal with NPLs and ensure the stability of credit assets. Number two, as we are facing COVID challenges and difficulties in other areas, we have increased efforts to prevent risks. We have very strict requirements for identifying NPLs. For us, if there is a deferral of 20 days, we would identify the loans as NPLs. In this way, we can adopt forward-looking measures to deal with NPLs. Now, our NPL rate has decreased to the average rate of the banking sector. The end of this month is very important, as we know that we adopted a deferral of principal and interest payment in last year, and the maturity rate would be March the 31st this year. Recently, we have been monitoring the quality of such assets. I think that now the NPL rate for such assets is higher than the normal assets. For the ABC, we are facing some risks of a comeback of NPLs, but we believe that with the direction and guidance of CBIRC, or with the efforts of our ABC, the risks are basically under control. These are the 2 points I want to add here. Well, let me add something here as well. He said that he cannot share with you the specific figures now. That does not mean that he will never disclose the figures. According to relevant rules, probably ABC will disclose the specific figures in April. For other information, they would also disclose, for example, the wages for the management. ABC is now the third biggest bank in the world in terms of capital, asset, income. They are the third biggest bank in the world. As far as I'm concerned, the wages for the chairman and president of their bank is just 1% or 2% of the management of American and Japanese banks. You can present straightforward questions to him. In China, we adopt a socialist economy with Chinese characteristics, which in some areas it is quite similar to the Western system in terms of the capital reserves, competition, cost-income rate. We need to strike a balance in various fields. Generally speaking, the wages for the people is relatively low. China is a developing country. We need to bear in mind the conditions of the whole country. The banks need to pay taxes to the country, share dividends with the shareholders, and need to make contributions in other fields. For example, they need to do poverty reduction. They need to perform their corporate social responsibilities as well, which probably banks in other countries do not need to perform. Having said that, our banks need to ensure fiscal sustainability. In the past 15 years, the shareholders got the highest dividend from our banks. I used to work for the Construction Bank of China. At that time, it was reported quite objectively on some Western media. At that time, New York Times, during the financial crisis period, had a story on the wages of the management of the large commercial banks in China. At that time, our wages were just 1% of our counterparts in the U.S. We're not saying that the U.S. counterparts need to learn from us, but we will not learn from them because we have different national conditions, right? Thank you. Next question, please. Thank you. With the paper, last year we saw the figures of the newborn people, which has attracted a lot of contention. People are worried about the aging population's impact on economic, social, sustainable development. And my question is, what kind of measures will be adopted to ensure the pension system to support the long-term development of the Chinese population?
Very important question. China is a developing country and an emerging market. But we are now moving very fast into an aging society. The population above 65 counts for over 12%, lower than Japan and European countries, and for now also lower than the US. But according to the experts, it will be in a very short time, maybe this number, China will outnumber the US in terms of aging. Indeed, aging is a very grave challenge for us, and we are considering multiple measures to address this problem. And I know my colleagues from the Ministry of Population and Society answered this question a few days ago, including a delayed retirement age and also the promotion of birth. But now the society has changed. Even with incentives, people may still feel reluctant to give birth to babies. And indeed, endowment insurance is one of the measures as we're considering. And it is also in line with the spirit of the CPC Central Committee's decision to develop endowment insurance. And may I invite Mr. Luo Shi from PICC to answer this question. Thank you very much. And I know this issue has attracted great public attention. And China is now facing the challenge of aging society. Chairman Guo also shared his view on this phenomenon. And the pace and scale of China's aging society is very prominent, even in the whole world. Yet we have a very complete old age care system, and over 1 billion Chinese people could enjoy basic old age care. And the annuities are also developing. For individual old age care, the progress has been relatively slow compared with the Western economies, but they only account for a very small margin of the whole holistic old age care. Also, this issue received the attention of General Secretary Xi Jinping himself and the State Council. The CBIRC had a very in-depth analysis of the problem and roll out a comprehensive plan to address aging society and problems, to support the endowment insurance as the third pillar. The third pillar has its own character. First, It is an option for the high incomers besides the first two pillars. And also provides a new option for those working in emerging industries and businesses. And third, more importantly, with sustained efforts, this third pillar will contribute to the development of the capital market, including contributing to the investment of cross-cycle investment. So the introduction of business endowment insurance will boost the development of capital market. Under the guidance of CBIRC, PICC has made new explorations. First, we developed new business insurance programs, and for traditional life insurance projects, we studied on the proposal of preparatory fund. And under the guidance of CBIRC, we also introduced different insurance projects meeting the diversified demands of different age groups. And also we launched individual tax-deferred commercial pension insurance in pilot areas in some Chinese cities. And some potential measures are still under discussion. And also we took the lead in exploring reverse mortgage pension insurance business for housing, with 29 cities in operation. And for housing is a very important asset for the Chinese people. And when they get old, how can we leverage housing become one of their tools to make sure that they get taken care of when they grow old? And also we explore new ways to provide pension service, providing care for over 42 million people. Also, we build up the old age care industry. We establish the management of pension services, so make sure that they can receive their old age service in community, receive basic medical care in hospital, and make eligible investment through insurance. PICC has one of the largest life insurance companies in the world. We're cooperating with competent international insurance companies to introduce international models into the Chinese market. We also take part in the management of basic pension insurance funds. The scale of assets under management of the pension fund was nearly 250 billion yuan. And the yield exceeds 10%. Pension reform is one of the major measures to tackle the challenge of aging society, and will follow the decisions and plans of the CPC Central Committee and follow the guidance of CBIRC to fully leverage the role of pension as a long-term and sustained efforts in investment, and develop business pension model, support the third pillar of endowment insurance, launch new products to meet the old age care demand of the aging society? Next question, please. Bloomberg. I'm with Bloomberg. A question about fintech for Chairman Guo. For fintech companies like Ant Group, what role should they play in the Chinese financial market? Are there any businesses that should not be in the scope of their operation?
Thank you for your question. Actually, this question attracted great attention from both domestic and international media. And I think the journalists know the situation. Our relevant line ministries had a meeting with the management of Ant Group. Relevant information was disclosed. Vice Governor Pan Gongsheng also talked about relevant issues. You talk about internet platforms. What kind of role can they play in China? Well, I think the scale and scope in China in this sector are the biggest in the world. They have provided digital credit, digital insurance, and other types of assistance for small and micro businesses, and they are doing a very good job, which are among the best in the world. They are doing a lot of innovations as well, and they are extending great support for small and micro businesses in China. We encourage such innovations. Having said that, we also stress that all types of financial businesses need to follow rules and regulations and observe laws without exception. For example, if a company needs to issue loans, previously we published regulations or notice on the issuance of loans on the internet. For example, joint lending and the international platforms need to follow relevant rules in joint lending, and the contribution need to be no less than 30%. There is also some requirement related to the concentration level and other types of requirements. We also presented a transition period, for example, 1 year, and relevant requirements need to be fulfilled by the end of this year. For Ant Group, it has online banking. Tencent also has its online banking. And we encourage the development of such online banking. But meanwhile, they need to follow financial rules and regulations. There is no restrictions for them to do in the financial sector. But as they do the business, for example, trust, insurance, and other types of financial services, for example, leasing, companies need to observe relevant rules and regulations. We believe that after relevant adjustment, these institutions would meet relevant requirements and achieve sound development. Next question, please. With Phoenix TV, my question is for Chairman Guo. We know that the U.S. government imposed sanctions on relevant Chinese companies and individuals. What impact will this have on China's financial market and system? And what is response to such sanctions? What measures will be taken to open the financial sector further? And what kind of impact would our national security review mechanism on the access of financial investors to China? Well, in the interest of time, I would give brief answers. Number one, I think all countries have their sovereignty, which is a consensus recognized and reached by all countries. Just like the US, China is a sovereign state. How to run China's financial sector? What are the rules of conduct for China, for the financial institutions doing business in China? Well, they must follow Chinese rules, just as what they need to do in the US. The US intervened a lot in China's domestic affairs, for example, on the Hong Kong issue and on Xinjiang. Other departments already presented enough information to show our position. We believe what they have done does not make sense, and we are strongly opposed to their sanctions. The CBIRC and China's banking and insurance sector would never perform US laws and regulations. We must observe Chinese laws and regulations. And in Hong Kong, all the financial institutions need to observe Hong Kong's rules and regulations. We are strongly opposed to US sanctions, and such sanctions are not binding at all. Having said that, we are ready to work together with US financial institutions and US businesses, as well as relevant intermediaries. We can cooperate with them. China is doing well in opening up. In the past 3 years, we approved the establishment of over 100 foreign banks and insurance companies. For example, Alliance Company from Germany got the approval to establish their wholly owned business in China. And some French company also worked together with Chinese counterpart to establish asset management company in China. And the biggest asset management company in the world also worked together with Construction Bank to establish some entities. The Schroeder company also worked with Chinese counterpart to establish their entities in China. And so far, we have approved the establishment of 25 wealth management entities in China. We encourage and welcome foreign investment. And these foreign investors can establish joint ventures or establish wholly owned companies in China. This year, we will continue to encourage such international cooperation further and make it easier for foreign investors to come to China. Actually, almost all areas in our sector has been opened up. Probably there is some restrictions on some specific businesses. And here, let me stress to the Chinese media that some general public and intellectuals and probably some officials in China are a bit worried that what kind of impact will this have? What kind of impact will foreign investors have on Chinese market? Well, let me say this. The foreign investors, generally speaking, are observing Chinese laws and regulations. We encourage their investment. In terms of total assets, lending, loans, and deposit, they are increasing in volume, but their share is decreasing. For example, the share of foreign banks is just 1%. In the past, probably their share was 1.3 or 1.4% on the Chinese market. But now, they only account for 1% of the Chinese banking sector, and their impact on China's financial sector is quite limited. And the insurance sector, they account for about 6%, with only limited impact. So for us, we will continue to encourage foreign financial institutions to come to China and do their business here. Thank you. Thank you. With China Daily, this year marks the first year of the 14th five-year period. What kind of measures will be taken to support innovation development strategy, and support the development of strategic emerging industries? Thank you.
I think they should put your question earlier, because this is a very important question. And Chairman Zhao Huan of the China Development Bank is an expert. We know that development financing is part of the portfolio of CDB. Actually, this is a very courageous and pioneering task, because they have to, as its name implies, development financing must blaze new trails in territories that no one has traveled before. So I ask, how do you control risks in your pioneering efforts? We do not have a support policy for its institution, because they have to rely on their own financially. So I will invite him to answer. Thank you very much for the question, and I may share with you our efforts in supporting the innovation-driven development strategy, TechFin, and strategic emerging industries. And with the support and guidance of the CBRC and following the new development philosophy, we've made positive progress in supporting scientific and technological progress and serving the relevant industry and strategies. In 2020, our loans increased in support of technological progress, increased by 23% year on year, and we see progress being made in integrated circuit, IC, business aircraft, and other major technological projects. About 330.4 billion yuan of loans were granted to strategic emerging industries, and 265.9 billion yuan of loans were granted to manufacturing industries, up by 37% year on year. And also we increased investment in the IC industry. We successfully completed the first phase of investment of the National IC Industry Investment Fund and actively advanced the second phase. We operate in line with the market principles, because this is the requirement for all funds in the world. And the valuation of the industry increased significantly last year and also contributed to the growth and investment performance of the fund. As for the second phase of the National IC Industry Investment Fund, we've raised funds of over 200 billion yuan. We all know this is the first year of the 14th five-year plan, and we follow the spirit of the fifth plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee. We'll focus on the central position of innovation in China's modernization and make scientific and technological self-improvement a strategic underpinning for national development. We'll serve technological progress and align with the 10-year action of basic research, strategic scientific plan and major scientific projects, national labs and national science center will take part in these aforementioned efforts and set up a special fund on basic research and innovation. The special loan is estimated to reach 50 billion yuan. We'll also continue to support strategic emerging industries and the high-quality development of advanced manufacturing. And also, we'll launch special financial service to support supply chains and industrial chains. We have chosen about 1,000 companies are at a critical place at supply and industrial chains to cement the industrial basis. And also we will increase equity investment to modernize supply and industrial chains. We will leverage the role of advanced manufacturing and strategic emerging industries fund. And in 2021, the loans for equity investment to upgrade manufacturing will increase by 50 billion yuan. And also through diversified financing models will support the innovation-driven development strategy and also take the lead to work with other financial institutions to pool the financial resources domestically and through joint venture, joint investment to support innovation, and also through venture loans. Thank you for your support and thank you for your attention on our work. Thank you very much. Okay, next question, please. With the cover. In recent years, financial institutes have done a lot of work in alleviating poverty, but still some rural households and companies reported limited access to financing. Are there any new measures in this respect to serve poverty alleviation?
Thank you for your question. Well, I think we all need to ask this question. But in the interest of time, I will give the floor to Chairman Guo from ABC, as this question is focused on rural revitalization. Thank you for your question. I think there are two layers of meanings in your question. The first layer is what kind of measures would be further taken to consolidate the results of poverty reduction. And the second layer of meaning is that the financial accessibility needs to be further strengthened. I will answer them one by one. In terms of the first layer of the meaning, well, take my bank, ABC, as example. We will do three things for the next stage. Number one, as we have ended extreme poverty, we need to adopt further measures to promote rural revitalization. And number two, we need to further support industrial and agricultural development in the rural areas. Number three, we need to work hard to support the development of agriculture and rural areas. Well, the first point is about how to support rural revitalization. There are over 800 poverty reduction key counties in China. In 2021, we will keep our lending lendings to them, and our lending to them will be higher than our average lending support. In terms of how to support modern agriculture and rural industries, well, in this aspect, we'll focus on building high-quality farmland and high-quality seeds. We will extend financial support to these areas. This year, we will provide 60 billion yuan. The outstanding loans now is 160 billion, and this year we will provide additional 60 billion yuan. We will also focus on special agricultural products. For example, we need to support the deep processing of the agricultural products. It was pointed out at the Central Agricultural Work Conference recently that the primary parts in rural revitalization need to be taken at the county level, and the benefits need to be reserved for the farmers. And number 3, in terms of rural development, in light of the 11 priority areas, we will continue to extend financial support for the development of roads, electricity, gas, and housing in rural areas. The ABC now has over 1 trillion yuan of loans in agriculture-related areas. We will further increase them going forward. So this is my answer to the first aspect to your question. The second aspect of your question is about financial accessibility. Farmers are still finding it difficult to access loans. Well, for the ABC, we plan to adopt the following measures. Our services need to be targeted to the needs of the people. Meanwhile, we are working hard on increasing financial accessibility. Well, for us, I think the most important thing is that we need to boost the development of agriculture. We need to add some wings, and the wings are science and technology. Well, such wings are very important. We need to add wings of science and technology to agricultural development. We will explore new channels and new products to support the farmers. In terms of the new channels, well, for us, we will establish more physical branches at different counties and towns and townships. Meanwhile, we will also develop mobile banks in the rural areas. The mobile banks are quite accessible in the cities. And for us, we will further develop the mobile banks for the farmers to meet their specific needs. By the end of last year, we had 160 million users for our mobile banks. This year, we need to further extend the coverage of our mobile banks so that the farmers can get financial services more easily. Number 2, the new products. We need to introduce online financing products, making it easier for farmers to get financial services. For example, we introduced online financial products with the meaning of benefiting farmers' loans. Through this financial product, the farmers can apply loans online, get approval online, get loans online, and pay back the loans online. In this way, our products can serve more farmers. By the end of last year, the outstanding loan of this product is quite big. It has benefited 1.7 million farmers. This year, this product would be further extended, and there would be an additional 160 billion yuan of this product. With this product, more and more farmers are benefiting from our financial services, especially those in remote areas. Let me share with you one example, that is in Tibet or Xizang. In light of the local conditions in Xizang, our branch over there has adopted and introduced some very easy measures. For example, the financial services and loans for yaks and local agricultural products. By the end of last year, where the conditions were relatively poor, the outstanding individual loans stood at over 6 billion yuan. Over 70% of the registered poor households have accessed our microfinance services, which account for over 90% of all the microfinance services in Xizang. We are working very hard in this area to address financial accessible difficulties that you mentioned in your question. Thank you for your question once again. Next question, please.
Yes, Keith Bradshaw, New York Times. A question for Chairman Guo and also a question from Mr. Song, please. Chairman Guo, some people have argued that fintech companies have so much information on their customers that they don't need, even in the medium or long term, to meet the same capital adequacy standards as banks. Do you agree with that, or is your medium-term goal here over the next several years to push the fintech sector directly or indirectly towards the same capital adequacy standards as banks? And second, Mr. Song, you mentioned near the end of your remarks a 32% jump in compensation last year for Sinossure's payouts. And we've all seen there have been tremendous difficulties in many commodity-rich developing countries that had borrowed a lot through Sinossure. So where does the money come from for that 32% increase in compensation? Did Sinossure need some kind of additional injection of money from the finance ministry or others, or was that met entirely through big jumps in the premiums that you're charging exporters? Thank you.
我们有翻译吧？
好的，我在这里呢有两个问题。第一个问题是提给郭主席的。我们知道一些这个金融科技公司呢，他们掌握了大量的客户的信息。那么我的问题就是，从中长期来讲，中国是否会要求金融科技公司满足相关的资本充足率的标准？这是第一个问题，给郭主席的。第二个问题呢是给宋主席的。是给出口信保的宋先生的，那么您刚才提到，咱们这个出口信保公司呢，累计向企业和银行支付的赔款呢，在去年增长了32%。我们知道这是一个很大的这个增长。那么我想问一下，这笔钱是从哪里来呢？是从中国的财政部那里来，还是通过其他的途径？比如说比如说从这个保费的途径而取得的？谢谢。
好，你的问题很好。这个我们前面其实我讲了这个道理，就是如果这个
Well, these are very good questions.
业务是在这个网上开展的，是吧？
Well, if the financial services are conducted online through online platforms,
小贷公司也好，或者是这个
properly they do microfinance platforms or consumer-oriented financial companies. Well, my answer is yes. We ask them to have adequate capital.
刘鹤副总理
Vice Premier Liu He said that
一段话，这是2018年5月份吧，在政协，我觉得对这个全国的这个我们
made some remarks in May 2018 at the CPPCC meeting, and I think his words are very inspiring. He said that you must have some money if you want to do business. Well, over 2,000 years ago, people need to have some money to start up their businesses. And the historical lessons are quite clear. It is the same as today. The companies need to have some money to start up their businesses. And number two, people need to pay back their loans. Well, this is a basic principle as well. If the money cannot be paid back, then the banks cannot be sustainable. We have adopted a lot of measures to address illegal fundraising. And some people, probably at the beginning, they find some illegal fundraising very profitable. They can get profits of 8% or over 10%. And the illegal fundraisers explain to them that the banks give you very low interest loans because the banks have so many people and so many buildings, so they cannot give you very high returns. Well, that's not the case. Capital requirement is very important for the legal banks. And the banks are quite cautious. They need to have their loans paid back. If that's not the case, then that cannot be sustainable. They can only do charity work. And thirdly, Vice Premier Liu said that investment carries risks for individuals, for institutions, and for businesses. And the fourth point mentioned by Vice Premier Liu is that people need to be punished if they do bad things. So let's return to your question about capital requirement ratio. Well, we ask the online platforms to meet capital adequacy standards, and we give them some transition period. For some, the transition period would end at the end of this year, or at the middle, or in the middle of next year, or the transition period could be extended further. Why are we applying such a transition period? Well, in the past, probably we had less strict requirement for some people and for some clients. We hope that such clients can get their loans in a steady manner, but the transition period would be no more than 2 years. All the online platforms need to meet relevant capital adequacy requirements.
As for the second question, I'm very pleased that you follow my remarks very closely. Sinosure is an insurance company following commercial rules and market-based principles. This is the prerequisite for every work we do. You said about the increase of compensation last year. Where does the money come from? The money comes from, we know that for every business and commercial insurance companies, they must have their reserve capital. So this comes from the reserved capital that every year we considered the overall risks. The compensation increased, but it's generally under control. The last two questions. First, Hong Kong Economic Daily for Chairman Guo. You said not long ago that Hong Kong plays an irreplaceable bridging role. So, in the 14th five-year plan, what will the CBIRC do to support Hong Kong's role as an international financial hub and supporting its digital currency, offshore RMB center, and bond insurance?
Well, digital currency is mainly under the charge of PBOC. But now I'm having this press conference, as the chair of CBIRC, probably can present this question to the management of PBOC. Well, in terms of our position on Hong Kong, I think our approach is quite clear. We firmly support stability, rule of law, prosperity, and development of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is an important international financial hub. In the past over 4 decades of reform and opening up of the mainland, it has played an irreplaceable role. In terms of foreign capital utilization, most of the foreign capital came via Hong Kong. And in terms of the foreign investment on the capital market, for example, Shanghai-Hong Kong Connect and Shenzhen-Hong Kong Connect, Bond Connect, all such mechanisms have been carried out via Hong Kong. In 2012, I was serving as chair of the China Securities Regulatory Commission. At that time, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange and Shanghai Stock Exchange had very close cooperation. They adopted the vision of Shanghai-Hong Kong Connect. At that time, it was just a basic idea, and they told me, and I think that could work. And now it has been implemented and is doing very well. Going forward, Hong Kong can continue to play an important role in helping the mainland companies in issuing bonds, get connected, get listed. In terms of RMB or Hong Kong dollar bonds issuance, Hong Kong can play its part. We also support the mainland companies, including insurance companies, in getting listed in Hong Kong. We also support Hong Kong banks and insurers in making investment in the mainland. Well, a lot of large financial institutions on the mainland come from Hong Kong. Recently, we have adopted the development guidelines of the Greater Bay Area, in which the financial sector plays an important part. We will adopt a lot of new financial measures, including wealth management, insurance, and other areas. We will introduce more measures. These measures are being studied at the moment and will be implemented one by one. We believe that Hong Kong's economic development will return to the positive territory and will enjoy a bright future. Thank you. The last question, please. Thank you. Just now, Chairman Guo talked about corporate social responsibility. We know that last year, the financial sector provided interest loan concessions of 1.5 trillion yuan to the real economy. Will this policy be sustained this year? What kind of measures would support the real economy? This journalist is from Hong Kong Commercial Daily.
The policy will continue. And the loan interest concession was the area that we made most. And this will continue. They will have some adjustment, but the interest rate will stay low. And as for fee, it will remain intact. So for those fees being cut, will stay the status being cut. Third, will support the restructuring of debt companies, and there will be more policies to follow. We'll reduce the burden of companies, so we'll do whatever we can to support the resumption and reopening of economy and the development of companies. And I invite Chairman Zhao to add a few words. Last year, through the interest rate cut, and fee cuts, the CDB made interest concessions directly to companies of 33.5 billion yuan. These are the direct interest concessions we made. And this year, we'll continue to support the real economy and made equally vigorous efforts to support the real economy and ensure that interest rate stay low. Of course, they will follow the market trend, remain generally stable. And for fees, we'll continue to make concessions to the real economy and ensure stability in the 6 areas and protection of the 6 other key priority areas. Today we have the press conference about 100 minutes, and Chairman Guo not only give remarks but also asks questions on the fellow correspondents' behalf. That's all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
谢谢啊，主持人。